And the little disclaimer is in the chat. Then let me know if you can't see it.
Okay, I'm going to, gotta go there. All right, so I'm going to read the disclaimer and, whoops, this meeting may involve the remote participation by members, either by telephone or other electronic means due to the local public health emergency novel coronavirus pandemic, pursuant to the provisions of Minnesota statutes, section 13D.021 period. And this is the Minneapolis BAC Engineering Subcommittee meeting. So, Melissa, do we call, we don't call a roll call, do we?
Nope, not for the subcommittees. I'm keeping track as people arrive.
Okay. So if everybody has been able to find the agenda, which is in an email that was sent on 6/11/21 under the City of Minneapolis email site, you'll be able to pull up the agenda and look at that. And I think we're going to go ahead and start with the discussion, which starts with the Lindale Avenue South medians at 25th and 27th. It's at 30%. And Jason Stable, Hennepin County, Kelsey Folk from Minneapolis Public Works will be presenting. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Great. Well, thanks for having us. I'll let Jason lead the majority of the presentation here, but just as a quick recap for the group, we were here last in March with a concept that we shared with you all and got some good comments back. And so we're here with an update just to share back with the group.
Well, hello, everyone. Jason Stabell with Hennepin County. I'm in transportation design. So I'm the project manager for this median project along Lindale Avenue. So I'm sharing my screen right now, and the project is at 27th Street and then 25th Street. So what I have up on the screen here is 27th. So this project involves redoing all 4 quadrants of the ped ramps, so ADA upgrades, adding a median in the middle of Lindale, shifting out traffic to the curb lines, vehicle traffic. It has painted crosswalks across Lindale, and then also RRFBs at all the quadrants, and then also in the median. So improvement to the pedestrian realm in this area. So additionally, you'll see the red rectangles. That is where the bus stops will be moved away from the intersection a little further away. So the guidance would be that with the RFBs to have the crosswalks, and then 20 feet back from there is where the stop bar would be. So that helps with, the double threat is still out there with a 4-lane roadway. So this is helping with that sight distance issue that would still remain. This project is, I'm just going to go to 25th. 25th is the same basic layout, just a little bit different context. So again, median and ped ramp work. And so where we're at with this project is this fall, these would be constructed, and we're anticipating maybe take 2 months. So it'd be September to November. And I forgot to add, there is some additional street lighting that will be added at one of the quadrants is missing, does not have a street light. So we're going to be adding a street light onto that quadrant. And so this is what we call a interim safety improvement that will help with the pedestrian realm in these 2 intersections. You've more likely heard of the interest in a 4 to 3 lane conversion on Lindale Avenue. This one is not about that 4 to 3 lane conversion, but I can share that the county is committed now to do a pilot project, probably next late spring, early summer, to look into the 4 to 3 lane conversion. So when I say look into it, from now until next spring would be developing what that 4 to 3 lane configuration would be, limits of the 4 to 3, and then next spring, early summer would be when there'd be a chip seal along the whole corridor, and then the restriping. So that pilot program and these medians and ped ramps work well together so that they both can happen. So with that, I can open to any questions you might have.
Philip?
Yeah, I know that we had talked about when this came before having two separate sort of island cuts, one for pedestrians, one for bicyclists. Since the bicyclists are going to be on the cross streets, but again, I'm not aware of emerging best practices and whether the cost issues and so forth, but I think we'd raised that earlier. Maybe Dan, you can help us on that. Jason, your thoughts?
Well, I can say that was something that was brought up in March. We had some discussions with, I think, Kelsey and Matt about that, and I think I'll let Matt or Kelsey talk about the network of bikes in this area. So
Sure, I can jump in. So we did discuss that. And since there's not a planned or existing bikeway on 25th or 27th, felt that the bikes can use the crosswalk with the pedestrians, that there wouldn't be specific bike infrastructure provided for those crossings since there's no planned bikeway on those streets.
Okay. Thanks.
What is the width of the opening at the median there for to cross?
So in here, should I zoom in a little bit?
Mm-hmm.
Not going to help dimensions, but it is 8 feet wide.
Okay, thank you.
I will add that it's not shown in this graphic, but for most of this meeting, it's a vertical face curve, but in the middle, we are putting it to be more of a slope. And this will allow for fire trucks, if need be, to cross over the median. It's not going to be too obvious. We don't want it to be obvious, so most cars will take that left. But when a fire truck needs to go across, they'll have that possibility. So it's not shown in the graphic, but it's a detail that we have in our construction plans.
Super. And is there an RF rapid flashing beacon at both of these intersections?
Yes. So there'll be push buttons on each quadrant for people to activate the RFB with the flashers and things of that nature. And then in the median, we'll also have flashers so that it's flashing in the median too. So drivers in that inside lane will see a flasher, and so there's a total of 6 different flashers at each of these intersections.
Well, super. I don't see any more questions or anybody with raised hands. I really appreciate you bringing, Jason and Kelly, bringing this back before us. I think it was a great conversation in March, but it's just, I'm appreciative that we can see that this is happening and that good news about the 4 to 3 pilot program.
Yeah, and when that's getting more kicked off, they will be definitely, I'm not the project manager on that one, but they will be definitely coming back to you guys with some more engagement on the 4 to 3. So that's all I got. Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, do we have time for one more question?
Yes.
Sure.
Yasna, do you have a question?
Hello, I am not a BAC member, but I'm here to present on a different project. So I wasn't here for the March meeting. May I ask, is the red part of the median, is that going to be concrete or is it going to be green like it is, like the medians that are south of Lake Street down Lindale?
So they'll be concrete. So we're looking at this as a more interim project. There's good elements here, but know that there is a total reconstruct of Lindale Avenue in the plans for the 2026 to 2027 timeframe. So we see that the green infrastructure along Lindale, that's the project that's going to really enhance that. So it should be in the county CIP starting next year. It's tentatively in there as the staff are working on it, but by the end of the year, the elected officials make it official. So I gave you more than just a yes or no answer there.
Phil?
Yeah, actually, I was going to ask about that too, whether it's concrete or plants, and I thought, well, since we're looking at a total reconstruct, possible 4 to 3, why put any plants in? But I was just thinking of the reconstruction of whatever the highway that goes down into the city of Afton, and they did a very, I don't think they did trees. They put in some sturdy vegetative matter, and width might be about the same here. I don't know, it just occurred to me that there, even in some of these temporary 2, 3, 4, 5-year installations, I don't know if it's more hassle or difficult or challenging or operations, but, maybe there might be an evolving standard of plant material that can be put in that. Again, it just sort of, it's more a visual softening than anything else. Just a thought, but the city of Afton was quite happy so far with what they did.
And just to add, it might be good to also check to see if this is in a green zone.
Okay. I'll just add one last thing is, the thought of this project is we're milling off the asphalt and putting in the concrete. So we're not even getting down into the subsurface of the road. And so it's built, it's not going to be built to be a 50-year project median. It's going to be built knowing that 10 years from now, this will not probably be in the same format. So we were concerned that if we tried to put topsoil on top of the existing concrete road that's under there, it's just going to be a kind of a mess of dirt. So
yeah, I can see that. Yeah. So thanks.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Jason and Kelly.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay. Do you need anything from us, by the way?
I don't think so. Kelsey, do you need anything?
No, I'd leave it up to the committee. We did get a resolution from you all when we were here last with the previous concept. And I don't think we need one to move forward. If there's something that you all would like to memorialize, great. Or something about the 4 to 3 support for that coming maybe would be good. But I don't think for this project that we need any further resolutions.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
All right. All right, and so next up we have the University and 4th Bikeway, which is at 15 to 30% with Mike Samuelson, Minneapolis Public Works, and Kelly Gosto from the Hennepin County, and Steve Weiser from Alliant.
Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Mike Samuelson. I'm a transportation planner with Public Works, use he, him pronouns, and similar to the presentation that Kelsey did, I'm going to largely turn this over to our partners at the county, Kelly Augusto and Steve Weiser, who's from Alliant Engineering. So this is a county-led project. The city's been a partner along with MnDOT, Metro Transit. I'm sure Steve will provide some more detail as well. And I think we last came to the BAC in August, so there's been quite a bit of discussion since then, and providing an update today to the committee. So Kelly, Steve, I will pass it over to you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks everyone for having us as part of your agenda tonight. We have some updates on the University and 4th roadway improvements project for you this evening. Steve, if you want to go to the next slide for introductions. I'm Kelly Augusto. I am at Hennepin County in their Transportation Design Division, and I'm managing the University and 4th project. And with me this evening is Steve Weiser, our design consultant project manager with Alliant. So the last time we met with your committee, as Mike said, was in August of 2020. And we were looking at a one-way bike facility on University Avenue and 4th Street between I-35W and Oak Street. And this was the recommendation from a study done in 2018. At the time, we were looking for your feedback on the type of bike facility, separation, and if there was a preference for the facility to be at street level or sidewalk level. Following that meeting, your committee did issue a resolution asking for consideration of a two-way bike facility on University Avenue and a reduction in travel lanes. And the city staff also supported this and advocated for considering a dynamic use of a lane if lane reductions were not part of the project. The University of Minnesota is also a partner in the project and are supportive of a one-way bike facility on University Avenue and 4th Street, mostly citing safety and operational concerns with a two-way facility and the changing student population each year, bringing in users who may be unfamiliar with that type of facility. So for the phase of public engagement that we are currently gearing up for, we've decided to bring two layout options that we'll be discussing tonight. That we'd like to bring to the public. One version will have a two-way facility on University Avenue, and that will be the main focus of the work in that option, with some improvements to the one-way facility on 4th Street. And then another version of the layout will have one-way facilities on both roadways. The budget that the county has available to use on the project is set with the scope of the project being a partial reconstruction, and the goal is to keep all improvements within the existing public right-of-way. So I'll turn it over to Steve, who will go through some of the design decisions and provide an overview of the layouts we're preparing to take to the public.
Okay, thanks, Kelly. Yeah, I'll just provide a quick summary of some of the key design decisions that we've arrived at to date through our work. The project does include a comprehensive multimodal traffic analysis where various lane configurations were screened. The results are that the county staff supports 3 lanes of traffic between 10th Avenue and 17th Avenue to balance the operations and the queuing and promote efficient transit travel times through the corridors. Lanes will be reduced on the east end of the project, though, with 2 general purpose travel lanes from 17th Avenue to Oak Street. The project, as Kelly mentioned, is a partial recon to achieve the goals of the project of improving the facilities for bicyclists, pedestrians, and transit users, but not a full reconstruction of the roadway. Much of the existing infrastructure out there is in good condition and will remain in place to the extent possible. A full reconstruction project would require a significantly larger budget, probably 3 times the amount that's allocated for this project. Transit platform locations that will accommodate the future E-Line, BRT, University of Minnesota buses, and local routes have been identified and consolidated along the corridor. And the design will provide for separating travel modes at the transit platforms by bringing the bikes behind the shelters at the sidewalk level and a separated pedestrian space behind the bikeway. Through our first round of engagement and extensive coordination with the project management team, we've landed on a preference for a street level curb protected bikeway design, which I believe was the preference of this committee as well. There are some other constraints and amenities within the right-of-way that will need to be considered as we look at the alternatives tonight, including mature large oak trees and historic elements along the University of Minnesota campus. So working with the project partners, we developed 2 layouts that you have copies of. The first layout we generated, labeled Layout A, has a 2-way curb separated bike facility on University between 10th Avenue and Oak Street. The intent is to provide a buffered bike lane on 4th Street as well. However, some of the stakeholders have stressed that 4th Street may be a slightly lesser priority than University, and that a more minimalistic approach on 4th may be understandable to work within the budget provided by the county, while providing a better bikeway on University Avenue. So layout A has more effort spent on University than it does on 4th Street. But we're trying to maintain existing curb lines and sidewalks wherever possible. And where the infrastructure is in good condition, we'll try to maintain that in place. So with the partial reconstruction, some boulevard space can still be maintained, but opportunity areas for additional greening, additional boulevard space, and above ground stormwater management will be limited with a wider bike facility on University Avenue. This slide here shows a representative block for the new 2-way bikeway on University. The segment has 3 travel lanes, slightly narrower than the in-place travel lanes at 10.5 feet, and then 11 feet on the outside where the transit vehicles will operate. This design does move the curb line out several feet from where it is today to provide the wider bike facility. And this comes at the expense of boulevard space in some locations and will also require relocating streetlight standards. The design would look similar to the existing facility on Oak Street, south of Washington Avenue on campus, as shown here in the left side of the drawing. The view at the right shows the dimensions being considered and highlights one of the areas constrained by features within the right-of-way out here. The green circles represent mature oak trees, some over 3 feet in diameter, that are right behind the existing sidewalk that we're trying to maintain with either design that you'll see tonight. The design on the west end includes a 10-way bike facility in areas where the outside curb line is being reconstructed. East of 17th Avenue and Church Street, we have the ability to reduce down to 2 travel lanes and still maintain mobility through the area. This essentially frees up additional space for the bikeway. I do want to point out that the existing condition out there, which you'll see on the lower left photo, the existing bike lane is on the, it's a wide gutter pan area. Basically, it's an integral construction with the curb and gutter, but it's a 6-foot wide bikeable surface that's actually a wide gutter pan as well for drainage purposes. But to avoid reconstruction of the infrastructure that's in good condition in this area, and to avoid impacts to the historic fencing that you'll see on the right side of this drawing, we're proposing to leave some of the curb and biking surface in place. This allows us to leave the sidewalk, the boulevard, the light poles as well in place, leaving the green space and the boulevard, leaving all of that in place while still providing a two-way bikeway in this area. With this 2-foot buffer curb that we would add here, we'd still be able to maintain basically a 15-foot wide area from curb to curb face. That would allow us to add a two-way bike facility in that area while still leaving the remaining infrastructure in place. The alternative could be to provide a wider buffer here, less bikeway space, but more of a gap between bikes and travel vehicles in the travel lanes. Moving north up to 4th Street in this layout A, this photo shows a typical layout for the west end of the project. Essentially, both curb lanes would remain in place in this scenario. This allows us to keep the boulevards, the sidewalks, and the light poles intact. The lanes would still be narrowed from the existing condition to provide a slightly wider buffer than what's currently out there today. There would essentially be a 2-foot wide buffer remaining, which would likely be striping and raised delineator posts in this scenario, similar to what you see on the right side drawing here, or the right side photo. There would also be basically a 4-foot wide biking surface, and then the outer 2 feet would be the existing gutter pan along 4th Street. East of 17th Avenue, 4th Street would have 2 through lanes. There's been a request from the university to provide space for charter bus parking to be used during events. The space has been also discussed for potential metered general purpose parking at all the other times that it's not used for event parking. So that would be the use of this 9.5 foot wide area here with a 3-foot buffer and a 6-foot bikeway. In this area, we'd also, again, propose to leave the curb and gutter in place, the sidewalk in place, and the existing light poles and the existing trees that are in that area would also remain in place. And then we provide a 3-foot wide buffer that would likely be striped with delineator posts to facilitate easy unloading for the parked vehicles. With layout A, the proposed traffic signal phasing along University Avenue with a 2-way bikeway would mimic the phasing implemented on the recently constructed Jackson Street bikeway in St. Paul. A leading bike ped signal interval would be provided, and then right turns would be restricted on red to minimize the conflict of right turners from the University cross streets looking to their left or oncoming traffic and pulling out in front of bicyclists traveling in the contraflow direction. Right turns on red would also be restricted on University Avenue. Signal phasing would include the use of a flashing yellow arrow and a green ball indicator on University Avenue, and signage would be installed to identify that right turners on green must yield to bikes and peds in the crossing. The second layout we're working on, labeled option B, has one-way separated bike facilities along both streets. Again, construction would be focused on the bikeway side of the road, with the majority of the infrastructure remaining in place. As you saw with layout A, the intent would be to try to maintain much of the in-place curb and gutter and the sidewalk, lighting, and the boulevard spaces as much as we can. With this option, there may be additional opportunities for green space and potential green infrastructure, green stormwater infrastructure along areas along University. This slide shows a representative block for a one-way facility on University on the west end of the project. Again, we have 3 travel lanes, as you'll see on this typical section. Excuse me, we're maintaining the existing 6-foot wide concrete bikeway surface that's out there today, and adding a 2-foot wide raised curb to separate the vehicles from the bikes. Maintaining the outside curb allows us to save the lighting and the sidewalk out in this area and maintain existing boulevard trees in addition to the mature trees that we already talked about behind the sidewalk area. In this type of scenario, striping and delineator posts could be considered in lieu of the curb to make it feel a little more open for the bikers, but that would come at the expense of better protection afforded by the raised curb and more potential for handlebar impacts with the bikers and the delineator posts. So we've showed a raised curb element on this scenario. The approach east of 17th Avenue, Church Street, is different for layout B. In this area, we're proposing to move the outside curb inwards towards the center line of the street to provide for an 8-foot wide one-way bike facility in the area. The 8-foot width would be an improvement for side-by-side riding and passing, maybe provide a more comfortable ride for a biker than the 6-way or the 6-foot wide alternative in some of the other areas that we've provided in the layouts. Moving the curb allows for a wider boulevard and green space and potential green stormwater infrastructure if the other criteria for that implementation is met in this area here. Here again, we'd have a 3-foot wide buffer, which would include a 2-foot raised curb element, and then the outside sidewalk and light poles could remain in this scenario. Moving up to 4th Street, this is very similar to layout A in terms of space. Lanes will be narrowed from the existing condition to provide for a 2-foot wide buffer, with the one-way option on University being less expensive to build than layout A. There may be some budget available to provide for a curb separated bikeway along 4th Street from end to end. The buffer curb would have to be narrow if we maintain the outside curbs. It'd be 1 foot wide, and the bike lane would still be 6 feet face to face of curb, the same as option A, but there'd be a raised curb element as you see on the typical section on the right. Layout B is identical to layout A east of 17th Avenue. Again, there's 2 through lanes, bus, and potential general purpose parking in that area. Striping and delineator buffers would allow for easy loading into the parking areas, and we've maintained the outside curb and gutter, sidewalk, and the light poles infrastructure, which is in good shape out in this area. So with both options, there's a lot of detail to work through yet with curb types, curb shape. Some of the options might have different curb shapes to make it easier for pedals and riding close to those curb types. So a lot of work to be done there, as well as determining the specific intersection type treatments. So once the feedback's received from the public, we'll work with the project partners to select the preferred alternative and advance the final design elements. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Kelly to talk about kind of our next steps with the process.
Sure. Our next steps are that we're currently working with the project management team to prepare information for an online public open house that's going to go live starting next Monday, June 21st, and be open through July 2nd. We're also kicking off our second round of outreach with project stakeholders, including neighborhood associations, business, and university groups. After that, and after the engagement activities, we hope to arrive at a preferred layout with our project partners to go for municipal consent on a layout, possibly in August of this year. Then the final design and environmental documentation efforts need to be completed and approved by June of 2022. So that we can align with the requirements of our federal funds that are part of our project budget. And then construction would begin in spring of 2023. And here's my and Steve's contact information along with the county project website. And we can open it up to questions that anyone may have. And Bill, I think your hand is raised from before. Or is that a new question?
I have no questions at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Aaron?
Hey, yeah, so I just had a question with the 15-foot section of the two-way layout A option. It's more, I guess it's kind of like a concern slash question. It's obviously amazing to have that much space, so it's not a bad thing. My one concern is that having a 15-foot wide opening will open that stretch up to vehicle parking, even though it's not supposed to. And so one thing that I was just kind of looking up, and maybe Matthew or someone could send some of this to you, or I could just post this actually in the links while I'm talking. But in the Blaisdell portion of the Whittier-Lyndale Bikeway that the city is working on, they kind of manage the two-way section at intersections and kind of curve it in to follow so that it makes it uncomfortable for a car to enter that space. And so if you zoom in on, you don't need to do it right now, but just if you zoom in on that PDF at like 38th and Blaisdell is the one that I pulled up right away, or Lake and Blaisdell. Those are both like really cool examples of just, and we don't know if they work yet because this is still yet to be built, but just creative ways that I think hopefully will keep cars out of those areas. And maybe there's some other little tricks you all could work out to use, maybe like add a couple concrete bollards or something to narrow the car entry space so it looks like a car couldn't fit, even though if it's like 8 feet wide or whatever, an emergency vehicle could still get in, or something along those lines. But just, I'll leave it in your court. But I'm excited to see this project. But just thought of
thanks, Aaron. Yeah, there's a lot of intersection details we need to work out, obviously, but noting that we want to keep vehicles out of that space. There was a similar situation over by Oak, as we're trying to deal with how they might come down Oak Street and turn into the bikeway there. So we will take that into consideration as we work through the final design details.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you for the example.
Yeah, thanks.
Deanna?
Yeah, I have kind of a general question. Maybe it's for everybody. Has the committee ever discussed the pros and cons of putting in curb separators from the road versus the double line open, I don't know, bouillons or whatever it is that go up the side? It seems to me like a curb on only a 6-foot wide bikeway is uncomfortable for many bikes. Have you all ever discussed pros and cons? Anybody else's feelings or attitudes towards the different kind of separators?
I guess I personally would side with the curb. Maybe it might make you feel a little more constricted technically, but the physical separation that would actually prevent a car would actually have to go over the curb rather than just, I've seen too many crushed bollards and snapped off bollards to find too much comfort in them.
So you're thinking it's safer?
Yeah, just purely safety wise.
I'll say I think the committee has talked about that quite a bit over the years, and one of the things that caught my attention as well, Deanna, is the width. I'm trying to think. I think most of our other curb barriers are on a little bit wider, typically on two-way. I think Plymouth Ave North, that is a one-way in each direction, and I think there's definitely more width. So I think about that as well as maybe a concern. But I guess I will note that at least it's a extended gutter pan, so they're I believe the whole way. Maybe I'll check with other staff on that, but so at least there isn't that like seam, between the blacktop or the bituminous and the gutter pan. So it feels like maybe a little more space. I don't know, but I think that's a good observation about the width.
Matthew, it would be on University where they have the wider gutter pan and it's all a concrete surface now. but on 4th Street, it'll be operating the way it is today with the 2-foot gutter pan basically, and then the 4 foot of asphalt
Right.
with these 2 layouts. And that would be to maintain those curb lines where they are now.
How do they clean those, by the way? You know, of the debris that collects in the wintertime, for example.
Yeah, they would have a Bobcat type machine to get in there with the 6 foot width. It would have to be a Bobcat
Such a
style.
great job right now. Okay.
Have we double checked with our maintenance team about that?
We did. We met with Steve Collin on June 8th. We had a core team meeting on June 4th. Steve wasn't available for that, so we met
Okay.
separately with him on June 8th. He's not, and Mike, tell me if I'm wrong, but he wasn't terribly concerned about the 6 foot width. It seems like they're being more and more common where they've got to bring out the that type of equipment. I will add for snow clearing, an 8 foot width would be more beneficial to bringing out a pickup truck style plow, which might be able to clear faster than a 6 foot that they might have to haul a Bobcat out on a trailer, download it, and then get out there and clear it off. So
Yeah, that's right, Steve. Just one other thing to note about maintenance and the different types of barricades or separation between a bikeway and a vehicle lane is that there's obviously more maintenance, more replacement of bollards needed if we just have the bollards compared to the concrete curb, which typically have the bollards on top just for visualization. But when we have the concrete curb, the bollards last longer. That's something that still needs to be worked out between the city and the county. So it's been an issue that's been identified. So I just want to also flag that in case the BAC wants to get into a longer discussion about, the pros and cons of different separation types, that there's also another maintenance issue, which we haven't touched on in this conversation yet, but is being discussed within the project team for this project.
Jesse.
Yeah, I think kind of building off of the curb separation, particularly where there is the 6 foot bike lane that includes the width of the gutter pan. Bike lane width is typically measured minus independent of the gutter pan. 6 feet is getting you to about a 4 foot bike lane. And that's kind of like the bare minimum to even be like considered a bike lane by any type of bike lane standards now. And then when you add a curb on top of that, you kind of want a shy distance of like 9 inches. And so that is going to feel pretty tight in those situations where it's a 6 foot bike lane with gutter pan and the curb there at the same time.
I agree. The more I think about that, the more it seems like problematic. Like typically the installations with our concrete, we have even like, the striping is outside of that with a little bit more of a buffer. I agree that it almost does seem like you'll have to be biking like almost like perfectly in a straight line, so you don't either hit the curb with your pedal or kind of get into the gutter pan. So I do think that dimension feels problematic or challenging at best.
I really appreciate all the information this is Dan Miller. I really appreciate all the information that you provided us. And I think that the 2 plan views are perhaps maybe worth just pulling up on the screen. And I really, it's interesting to see what's happening with Oak Street and how that's coming together. But that might be helpful just to kind of quickly just walk us through east to west and west to east.
Sure, I think I can here. Let me try to grab screen. Which one would you like to start with?
Let's start with A.
Okay. I will pull up A. Can you all see that? Hopefully.
There you go.
Is that in? Is that up?
Yep, that's great.
Okay. Yeah, tell me if you want me to go slower, faster, however you want to deal with it. Basically, one of the things that I want to point out that we recently learned is that MnDOT is potentially considering reconstructing the bridges over 35W in the 2027, 2028 timeframe. So these would potentially be reconstructed, which the improvements would probably stretch over to 10th Street or 10th Ave, I'm sorry. So we'll be looking at these blocks a little differently, but I wanted to point that out to the group. Moving on, so there's one-way bike facilities coming in from the west. So we would pick that up. Basically, there's the new two-way facility along 10th that will be finished construction soon. So what we've shown here on the south leg is a two-way bikeway on 10th Ave. We would then, with this option A, pick up a two-way facility. We've got some constraints in the right-of-way here by the Floco apartments. There's an accessible ramp that gets them up into their facility here that juts out into the right-of-way. So there's a little bit of a pinch point here. That's why you'll see this kind of, the layout kind of juts out in this area. In this area, there's a couple of boulevard trees that would be likely taken out with this scenario. In the other layout where we've got a narrower bike facility, we can potentially maintain those trees, but with this scenario, we need to take those out. Might be ability to plant a new one with that width if we can provide some green space here. It's very narrow green space though. In this area here by 11th Street, we're looking at, consideration. We've got a lot of intersection treatments to work out with the group yet, but we would hope to maybe do some sort of a truck apron. There are large trucks that take 11th Street and go underneath the highway. We'd look to try to do something here at the corner, potentially to make it more friendly for bikes and peds, but yet still provide access for those large vehicles. Transit platforms along the corridor, they've been consolidated from what's out there today. The university has worked with Metro Transit to identify 3 locations along each corridor where we're going to have transit platforms. And then again, this will service the future E-line BRT as well. So the platform areas, Metro Transit would like 6 feet out front of the shelters for accessibility and for loading. And then behind here, we'll have to look at the grading and match into the adjacent property here at the university. Then this area here is where we end up. There's by Roy Wilkins Hall, Sanford Hall, there's some very large oak trees that have been there for many, many years. A couple of them are 3 feet in diameter or more. Good amenities for the university and kind of historic elements in this area. We're trying to avoid those. They are inside the right-of-way between the right-of-way line and the sidewalk. So we would like to try to avoid those, maybe relocate in this scenario, the light poles that are currently in the boulevard area. As you can see, we're moving that curb line back. Relocate those light poles so that we could still get maintenance equipment through here to plow sidewalks, but not impact these large oak trees in this area. The bridge between 13th and 14th, basically, in this area, we've heard that parking is pretty valuable in this area for the businesses in Dinkytown. With this option, we're maintaining the parking and showing an actual narrowing of the sidewalk to which would require we hammer some of that sidewalk off the existing bridge to provide the 10-foot bikeway. Still a generous buffer from travel lanes, but basically reducing the sidewalk space to provide that 10-foot bikeway. And then moving east, transit platform at 15th. This one's heavily used. There's this, what you'll see here on the layout. This is a historic wall fencing that extends along a good portion of the university property here along University Ave. It is a historic element. It's been there for a long time. We're trying to avoid impacts to that. The lighting is behind that in this area, so that helps us out in terms of space. But trying to provide the transit platform, bring the bikes back behind the transit platform, and still having a reasonable space for sidewalk. We do have the ability here on the left side of the street. There's a wider travel lane right now. There's no, the parking ends before this driveway here, but there's a wider parking slash drive lane over on the left side that we're able to push into to provide more space here for the transit platform. And then in this area along University with the two-way bikeway, we do lose the boulevard between, again, the historic fencing wall area to push into that for providing the bikeway. We do lose that green space. Once we get beyond Church Street, 17th Ave, we reduce down to 2 travel lanes. In this area, we can still maintain that boulevard, maintain that outside curb area, and this is where we have the ability to provide that wider bike facility. You know, I believe I mentioned in the kind of presentation area, we could provide a wider buffer curb or some other wider element to separate the bikes from the travel lanes. But with this layout, we're showing just a wider, more generous bike facility. So the eastbound would travel on that existing outside wide concrete surface, and then the westbound would be traveling on the bituminous surface. At 18th here, another transit platform right by the pedestrian crossing. So a wider area here will be bringing the bikes back behind. And then at Oak Street, the city has plans for a two-way facility or enhanced bikeways on Oak Street in the future. We're assuming that would be a two-way to kind of connect up with what's south of Washington, where there's a two-way bike facility on the west side of Oak Street. And then we carry that two-way bike facility up to 4th Street. And then we, I guess at this point, are assuming that two-way facility would continue on the west side of Oak Street, north of 4th Street. So we cross the bikeway over here, and then on 4th Street here in this area, this is where the charter bus parking used during events would be in this area. The 9.5 feet is basically just what's left over to provide a 3-foot buffer for door swings to the 6-foot bikeway. You know, you could play around with these dimensions and kind of mix that up as well. But this area would then be considered for general purpose parking when it's not used for events. Large transit platform here at Ritter Arena. A lot of express buses drop off here. So this is one of the longer platforms on the project. And then again, the bikes would go back up behind the transit platform and then back down to street level beyond the platform. And then continuing on, same scenario here where we've got 2 travel lanes up to 17th, a right turn lane to provide access over to this area where they've got a large parking ramp structure. And then 3 lanes to the west, continuing to 15th. At 15th, this area is being proposed for redevelopment by the McDonald's, the old McDonald's property. So we're working with that property owner to come up with a design here that'll work with our project plus what they're doing with theirs. They've got some improvements here for a plaza, and they're pulling the bike lane back up, I believe, along 15th as well. We do lose some parking here in the Dinkytown area to put in this transit facility. We do have ability here to eliminate this left turn lane and add some parking over on the east side of 15th. And then continuing on, this is just maintaining the existing outside curb lines. What we have left is a 2-foot buffer. Again, showing just stripes and sticks. Currently, there's a little bit of a buffer striped out there, but we've narrowed up the through lanes to provide a little bit extra buffer space with this alternative. And that takes us up to 10th and the area by the 35W ramp where we eliminate that free right turn and bring the bike facility and the pedestrian facility up to that new intersection. Working through some details with MnDOT. We'll have to work through interim details here until they come through and build the bridge project and really construct this block to its permanent configuration. There might be some ability where we can use some of this existing infrastructure, to bridge the gap for the next couple of years. So I'll jump over to layout B and then we can go back for questions. With layout B, this one-way facilities along both streets. Again, we got an 8-foot bikeway here coming off the ramp to get us to the new facility. We're able to provide a little more width here. This side of the street, there's a little bit wider pavement out there. We're proposing to kind of fix that situation. There's a weird taper here that we can get rid of and reconstruct that. Again, the pinch point by Flowco Fusion Apartments. In this area, we propose to just shrink the bike lane down to 6 feet through that area, kind of save their infrastructure, save their trees, save the boulevard space that's there today, and their accessible path, again, up to their building. With this option, with a little narrower bikeway at 11th here, we're able to keep the improvements within the right-of-way without getting permanent easement from the university, which could be problematic for the project, just given the way the land was acquired and the way the university owns their land. Easements could be difficult. So this option keeps the improvements within the right-of-way. In this option with the one-way bike facility, again 6 feet wide, which we've acknowledged is narrow, we can keep the boulevard trees in place as well, which are, some of them are fairly large, as well as those large oak trees back behind the sidewalk. But all the existing infrastructure that's in good condition, the sidewalk, the light poles, all that stuff would remain with this option. We'd just basically tack on that 2-foot buffer curb right next to that existing 6-foot concrete gutter pan. And then with this option, we don't have to get into reconstruction at the bridge. We would be able to maintain a wider sidewalk, 7-foot bikeway, and still a 4-foot buffer and the parking along the north side of the road. This area is pretty similar, but a little bit more generous sidewalk area with this design with the narrower bikeway. We're working through intersection details with the university as well. This one shows protected intersection corners. That's something we're considering, but still have a lot of detail to work through with the project partners. Boulevard space here in front of Falwell Hall would remain with this option. The green space that you see here, we can maintain that. And then as you go east of Church Street, this is the area where the curb line moves out. So this is like the secondary roadway curb, I'll call it. You got your buffer curb out here, secondary roadway curb. This is the existing curb line, if you can see where my cursor is. So this curb would move out. We'd have a more generous boulevard space available for either green infrastructure or just grass boulevard, but more green space with this alternative. We show a median in this option, so the bike lane pulls back behind and the ped crossing comes up here to shorten that up, so that the peds only cross 2 lanes of traffic and they can have this refuge median area here. And we showed it as green space. You know, obviously a lot of details to work out, but we showed it as potential green space area. Platform area by 18th is similar with both options. Obviously a little more sidewalk area with the narrower bike facility. This area is similar with both options as well. Two-way bike facility up Oak. And then this area is identical to layout A, where we've got the charter bus parking and the general purpose parking. With layout B, we showed another refuge median here where the bikes go behind and the peds could sneak out. Again, little less money spent on University, maybe a little more available for using on 4th Street for some of these enhancements. Similar work through this area between the two layouts, and then when we get to the Dinkytown area, layout B shows curb, basically a 1 foot wide barrier curb to separate the vehicles from the bikes. We need to work out the details of what that curb looks like, but you could potentially put in more of a tapered style adjacent to the bike lane, and then more of a barrier style adjacent to the vehicles to kind of delineate the space and avoid pedal strikes on the bikeway side. With this option, layout B, we show some more enhancements along 4th, more curb extensions, you know, a little more extensive work, since again, we're spending less on University to provide more reconstruction there, maybe a little more left in the project budget to do a little more on 4th Street. Curb extensions again here to shorten the crossing distance on some of the unsignalized intersections. And then similar improvements on this end. The transit platform here at 10th, we would hope to try to get this work inside the right of way, very tight. Not an ideal sidewalk width behind to provide a 6 foot bikeway, but you know, very tight for space in this area. And then again, getting rid of the free right condition, trying to improve this intersection at the ramps is one of the biggest problem areas on the project that we've heard. So that's kind of a walkthrough. Hopefully I didn't bore the heck out of you, but any questions, or do you want me to back up or go to any specific areas?
Maybe this is a question for Dan. Dan, how do you want to handle motions on this? Should we get one out early to just sort of get ourselves on a path?
I guess I'd like to ask first what the timing is and the urgency for a motion from Kelly and from Kelly, I guess. Yeah, Kelly and Michael.
Sure, thanks, Dan. I guess we'd ideally like a resolution from your committee again with support for one option or the other that's being presented, similarly to the resolution that you provided the last time.
Mm-hmm. And the timing as to when you would need that?
Maybe by the time you meet again in July, would that be reasonable?
That's very reasonable. I just we often do motions right after this meeting or during the meeting, and I think that sometimes it's helpful if I mean, you've presented a lot of information here that is really good, and I think it's worth taking some time to dwell on it if we can.
And we have the public open house open until July 2nd. So, I mean, certainly we wouldn't need it before that is closed.
Okay. With that said, Robin, if you have some thoughts about where we might want to go with the motion, I think that's appropriate.
Well, so we've taken positions in the past in favor of something that looks a lot like option A. So I think I'll put that out there as just the sort of baseline, and I think we'll have a lot more detail to share, but maybe I'll just move that we support option A of these two options.
We want to have just a conversation, or do we want to move this, Robin?
So I was gonna move it to just get the sort of foundational motion on the table, and then I think there will be a lot more like detail that we can add to it.
Okay.
But we can discuss it more after it's kind of just there on the floor.
Very good. All right, I have Phil's hand up.
Yeah, I just had a couple of comments. Steve, thank you. I really did appreciate the walkthrough, very, very detailed. So the two things that occur to me are certainly, so you have an area with new students every year, and I can see and maybe this is where you're going, Robin, I can see the sense that I'm a new bicyclist, new to town, I want to go somewhere. Oh, I can go both directions on University. It's the main thoroughfare. I know University. So I guess that would be the rationale there. My other more pecuniary question is I noticed the travel lanes are quite various at various sections from 13 feet to 10 and a half. You know, as a bicyclist, it does feel like the buses and trucks there. Is the going between 10 and a half and 13 feet on some of the 3 travel lanes, Steve, is that just to give a little more sort of buffer space? Because with space so tight, I'm wondering why they're not all 12, for example.
Yeah, so the county engineer is comfortable with 10.5-foot through lanes. So where we've got I'll call it a drainage utility on the outside where we're picking up outside drainage water. There we'd have a 2-foot gutter pan, so that would add the 2-foot, we call it a reaction distance. So you'd have your 10.5 plus 2. In the areas where we're accommodating transit vehicles in that outer right lane where they're traveling and stopping, we're shooting for an 11-foot lane plus that outside utility. Where we have just the buffer curb, the way we're anticipating the drainage would work is we just provide gaps in that so that water would flow to the outside curb. In that scenario, we've only got a 1-foot reaction. So you've got your travel lane width, which is either 10.5 or, well, it's 11 feet with the transit vehicles plus the 1 foot. So that's where we get the 12. So that's the difference between the lane widths on the layout.
Okay, that helps. Thanks.
Currently, there's, I believe, 11-foot lanes out there for the most part. Might be some wider areas, like I pointed out by 15th, but I believe it's around 11. So we're narrowing them a little bit from the existing condition.
Doesn't seem the worst. It can be kind of speedy there with, as I say, I feel I always experience trucks when I'm biking there.
Yeah, and we're hoping the street level, the curb separated bike lane too will make things feel a little narrower and slow things up.
So Robin has moved that we support option A, and I see 2 more hands up here. I'll go with Deanna first and then Cadence.
For the section under option A that is 2-way, what is that? Is that about 8 blocks? How long is that stretch where it comes in right by the highway and then it goes back to 1-way?
It comes in at the highway, so it comes across the bridge currently on University as a 1-way, and then we would continue the 1-way from basically the ramp, the off-ramp to 10th, and then it would become 2-way under layout A, and then it would be 2-way all the way to Oak Street.
which is what,
under
about
layout A.
about 8 blocks?
Oh, yeah, 1, 2, I'm gonna count them quick. I'm not even sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8, and then at the end by the arenas, it's a long couple of blocks. So, you know, I would
Yeah.
call it more like 10.
Okay, all right. I guess in some ways there's a simplicity to having the bikes go one way with the traffic, you know, one way down University and one way back and forth. To actually introduce the 8 to 10 blocks of two-way. So in some ways it's convenient, you know, for that 8 to 10 blocks, but at the same time, it's a lot of give and take, you know, give and take to pedestrians, give and take to green space in order to get our 8 blocks of two-way. That's my only thought about the, although I certainly like the flexibility.
And I will say that's why we're here with the 2 alternatives. We've heard comments both ways from stakeholders and the public, and you know, we've made the decision to take both of these to the public to get their feedback again. So that is why we're here.
Could I just respond to that from a planning perspective? It's not meant to be argumentative, more context. So in 2015, we passed a protected bikeway plan that identified, 30 miles of protected bikeways. And this this sort of campus route, including the 10th Ave Bridge, down to the Carlson School of Management at 4th Street, and then actually down 20th to Franklin Cedar, Minnehaha, is a two-way on the east side, all the way across the bridge, connecting to University on 10th. And then if you take those 8 to 10 blocks down University to Oak, we have the two-way on Oak. So I think the original vision was that connected two-way, hugging campus. So I just wanted to maybe provide that context in case there's folks that maybe weren't aware of that history of why there would be a two-way in this stretch.
So we've got Cadence, Robin, Jesse, and Joey.
I think Matt might have actually answered the question that I had, but yeah, I guess some of my main concerns are the two-way facility on Oak, just having used the existing facility that's on Oak many times in the past and having a lot of near misses when I'm trying to turn out of that facility by drivers who don't understand that I'm trying to turn left out of that facility if I'm going north. And so I was just curious if there were any lessons learned from that existing segment that have been applied to this design to maybe try again to minimize some of those conflicts that have happened, or if there's any insights there about how this two-way facility would be an improvement over the existing segment that has some issues for cyclists.
So you're referring to the segment south of Washington on Oak Street and turning onto Washington, heading northbound, or?
Yeah, I've experienced a lot of near head-on collisions when I'm trying to turn out of that facility, because I'm on the wrong side of the road for motorists who are trying to go straight, and it doesn't matter if I signal very emphatically with my arms or try to make eye contact. I don't think that people who are driving expect me either, and I've just had some scary close calls where I've had to throw on my brakes.
Yeah. And that's part of the concern with the two-way facility, is just that driver expectation of not expecting to see someone in the contraflow direction on a one-way street. But to Matthew's point too, there's two-way facilities on either end of this project, which make it a good candidate for a two-way facility, to try a two-way facility. So it goes both ways. And again, that's why we're here with 2 layouts. We want to hear feedback on both and pros and cons.
Yeah, I would also just add, Steve, to what you said. In addition to both ends of University having two-way facilities, some of the signal work that's being proposed here allows for separation of bikes and vehicles to eliminate or minimize those conflicts compared to, I think, the location you're talking about, Cadence at Oak and Washington, where there basically isn't a lot of guidance from the signals. So there definitely have been some lessons learned, I think, that the city's taken from previous projects and is applying to projects going forward.
All right, Robin?
Thanks, Dan. And I'll just, so we've talked about this a number of times in the past, but I think it might have been before we had some new folks join us. Well, one of the things that's really compelling to me about this particular street and why I think it really almost needs the two-way facility on the south side of University is that college students are using it as a two-way facility today, and they've been using it as a two-way facility for decades. Ever since it was put in, it's been a two-way facility de facto. And so I think that just in the interest of the clear need for a convenient way for people to go west in that place that they're showing us by using the current eastbound lane to go west in, but also in the interest of the safety of those folks who currently don't have any kind of signalization, don't have any kind of other protection, and are even more sort of unexpected over there because they're doing something that's against the rules today. I think this is a place where we really have to have a two-way facility, and so I've been pushing for that for a long time. I'm actually really excited to see the option A being brought forward, and I'm very thankful to Hennepin County, and very also thankful to city staff for really continuing to push for this. Anyway, I am an enthusiastic option A yes vote.
All right, Jesse.
Yeah, I think there's been a clear need identified for having the two-way facility here. So that's I definitely think that is the way to go and the way to throw our support for. I think the other thing that is a little, you guys have done a great job with trying to work within the constraints that have been given you and putting forth an option to see that two-way facility, come to fruition. The two-way facility that's shown is still kind of doesn't really necessarily meet minimum width standards for a lot of two-way facilities that are being built now and even within our MnDOT guide. And there's a lot of saying this sidewalk is going to be really narrow here, or there's going to be no boulevard space here because there's a two-way facility. But I think if you look at the section where there's only two traffic lanes, everything magically works, and for the most part. But then where it's the 3-lane sections, it's kind of been painted as this two-way facility is the reason why things are getting too constrained and everything. And so it's just that battle of it's the bikeway versus everything else. And I don't think that a two-way facility should be sacrificed here because of that sort of reasoning. That's all really I had to say.
Okay, Joey.
Actually, I think Robin said what I was going to say a lot better, so I'll just also I enthusiastically support the two-way facility.
And Aaron.
Hey, I just wanted to thank Jesse for his comments a moment ago because I was kind of thinking the same thing. I appreciate all the different designs, but definitely want to recognize that if we had 2 lanes instead of 3, we wouldn't have those issues. So I definitely enthusiastically support option A as well. Thank you.
Okay, so we could try to pull together a motion and a resolution for for our upcoming general BAC to vote on that at the 4th week in June, or the next time would be the 4th week in July. And I too am first of all, I'm very excited about what you've put together and all the information you have shared with us. It's really, really helpful, and I think that Robin has a good handle on this, and I would leave it to him whether it makes sense to try to put something together for this month, or to Kelly, if you can wait till the end of July when we could take a little more time at it.
I think that getting something this month should be possible.
Okay, very good. So Robin, could you take the lead on this and try to put, very good. Okay.
So if folks have, I'm going to drop my email into the chat. If folks have particular detail type stuff that you want to recommend changes to, I mean, so well, I think one of the things that I'm going to try to incorporate is just to maximize the extent of off-peak parking on the like the non-bike lane side of the road, partly because it is actually pretty important to folks, the small businesses in the area, partly because, to Aaron's point, you know, most of the time, most days of the week, we don't need 3 lanes on each of these roadways. So that's one of the things that I've already got sort of in my head as something that we ought to say. But if you have particular detailed comments that you'd like to incorporate, please just drop me a line.
Thanks, Rob.
Very good. Thank you for a great presentation, Steve and Kelly and Mike, and very much appreciated. Good.
Yeah, we appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Appreciate your feedback.
All right. Very good. So we have one last project to take a look at, and it is the 53rd Avenue North Bikeway, which is at 0%. And the presenter is, I'm going to get Jasna Hedzik-Stanek with Minneapolis Public Works. Yeah. Hello.
Last but not least, let me just get set up. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today, and for your undivided attention, as I'm the last one at the end of the meeting. So as Dan mentioned, I'm here for 53rd Avenue North Bikeway. We are at 0%. And my name is Jasna Hedzik-Stanek. I'm a transportation planner with Public Works, Transportation Planning and Programming. So in 2022, Minneapolis Public Works plans to resurface 1.2 miles of 53rd Avenue North from Penn Avenue North to Lyndale Avenue North. So the resurfacing is taking place between Penn and then this where you see the green line here. However, we are looking at the bikeway that is identified in our city's 10-year transportation action plan, All Ages and Abilities Network. We do have a bikeway, a connector bikeway facility identified from Penn to the Mississippi North River Regional Trail, which provides an opportunity to implement this bikeway segment as part of that resurfacing. And as many of you know, typically our bikeway projects with resurfacing are limited to striping and signing. So 53rd Avenue North is a border street and shared street between City of Minneapolis and City of Brooklyn Center on the north side. As you can see here, we have a couple of so this will connect the northernmost part of the city to our existing low stress bikeways, the Shingle Creek Parkway and the Mississippi North Regional River Trail. And we also have identified in our All Ages and Abilities Network a couple of other north-south running facilities, low stress at Dew Pond and a couple of connector that will be coming in the future. So this is really a kind of a crucial connector on the north side of the city. So the resurfacing also provides the opportunity to improve traffic safety and mobility for all modes while bringing this corridor in line with city policies and goals around Vision Zero, our Complete Streets policies, and the city's 10-year transportation action plan. In addition to that, some of the goals of this Bikeway project include enhancing comfort and improving predictability for all users. So everyone knows they can expect to see bicyclists on this roadway, supporting existing and future bicycle demand, as I just talked about and outlined here on this map. Improving bicycle network connectivity and access to destinations. This is a primarily residential area, but it does have a lot of parkways, as I mentioned, and a regional park here that people want to connect to with all modes. And then lastly, reducing vehicle travel speeds. As most of you know, through our Vision Zero efforts, we are lowering speed limit on city streets. Border streets will come later. And I know Brooklyn Center is looking at approaching their speed limits collectively. So that may not happen as part of this project, but it will happen in the future. I will come back to the timeline and just jump to some of the existing data. So 53rd is fairly a low traffic volume traveled street for all modes. It's low enough for people walking and biking that we don't actually have the counts for that through our historical data. In terms of Route 22, which runs on segments of 53rd Avenue North, there are an average 18 people onboarding that bus route. And for motor vehicles, it's anywhere between 2,100 to 5,300, and there's more traffic as you get closer to the 94 here. In terms of reported crashes, there are, given the volume of the street, there are more crashes than we typically see on similar streets, with 135 total, 3 pedestrian, 0 bicyclists, and 132 motor vehicles, with 100% of the pedestrian ones resulting in a crash with an injury, no fatality. And same with the motor vehicle, 35% resulted in some sort of injury and no fatality. And this data is between 2010 and 2020. In terms of existing conditions, right now there's just directional travel lanes. As I mentioned, it is shared between Brooklyn Center. There is a separated trail closer to the I-94 for a couple of blocks. Brooklyn Center does not have any plans to extend that trail, which is why the bikeway is being implemented. The street varies in width anywhere from 36 to 42 feet. And there is no parking on the north side and the Brooklyn Center side except for Fremont and Logan, and then also on the south side, there is parking for the most part, except for Humboldt and Knox. In terms of schedule, so right now, as I mentioned, we are at 0%. We just finished collecting speed data. We're finishing up our parking study and just collecting all that data, doing some of this initial engagement with the neighborhood groups, as well as the BAC tonight, and then we'll be, once we compile that, the engagement feedback, we'll be looking to develop a concept for a bikeway. So I will come back here in the next couple of months to present that layout to you all. And we will provide a final design by end of the year so Brooklyn Center can get that submitted to MnDOT due to the type of funding that they're using, and the implementation is set for next summer. And I think I skipped over this part, but I don't know if any of you live near 53rd or travel along there, but there is some work that you may see right now between the two cities, installation of ADA compliant pedestrian ramps on both sides of 53rd, select curb and gutter improvements and sanitary sewer repairs in both cities, as well as some work by Center Point. So I will stop sharing my screen there, and I will take any questions you have for me.
Marty?
Hey, I was in the community meeting. Hey,
Yeah.
I just want to thank you for your presentations. I love that sign you have all the different information on it. Thank you for that. And thank you for doing something on the north side. That's really, really nice. I have biked that way and I avoid it because of that 94, getting on and off 94. Really dangerous. People run through the stop sign that's nearest the park. So I don't know. I don't know. Going 94 east or west is very, very scary. And there's a little speeding on that road. So I know you talked about signage being there. I don't know. Are there any other safety measures that could be implemented? Because, as I said, it's really dangerous when people are trying to get on those ramps.
Yeah, so you're saying as you get close to the on ramps, off ramps, that's where you see a lot of conflict.
Yes, and the cars, I don't think cars, there's a bike trail right there, but I don't think cars are used to bikers being on that road, because there's not really a lane for us. So just something to think about. It's just really hard to cross there. And so I avoid it. I go to 49th instead.
Okay. Yeah, and that's why we kind of do this initial introduction to the project, just to garner feedback from the public as far as what may be some of the conflict points. Again, we are a little bit, very much limited in the fact that this is a resurfacing project. But if we see that, if we hear from enough people that travel this way, that is a very a big conflict there, we could do some additional video, put up some video and just see what's happening there. And yeah, I don't want to overpromise anything, but maybe do something with bollards again, because this is a temporary solution right now, as it is a long-term, low-stress bikeway. So I really appreciate that comment, and I will make sure I bring this back to the work group as we continue, as we develop the layout.
Thanks.
Phil?
Yeah, thank you, Yasna. So the westbound lane is 17 feet. That's on the north side. I presume it's an unmarked parking, space for parking. And, if this is a residential area, there's parking on the other side. Always my feeling is, why is there parking? It feels like we should definitely use that for a bike facility. Certainly because I'm sure there's not metered parking going north, of course, into Brooklyn Center. So it feels like there's space here, and I would simply take what's the unacknowledged parking space. That's my sense, unless I'm missing something.
Yeah, and based on the parking counts, it's very low parking along 53rd usage in terms of who's parking, because a lot of the houses are side facing, so there's not a lot of front entrances facing 53rd. That cross section I did show at 53rd and Fremont, right, quite wide lanes, and a lot of the parking, it's not actually, I think the paint has worn off, so I don't think you can even tell that it is a parking. I mean, people by signs you can. So there is a very visually, yeah, it is very wide and physically. So that's where I think by removing parking, let's say it's where it is 42 feet on one side, will really visually narrow the roadway when you do put in these directional bike lanes. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll take a stab at it. This is Dan Miller. So I went over there this weekend just to kind of survey what's going on, and my first impression, the condition of the road, if you just looked at the surface, this thing looked more like a street reconstruction project than a street resurfacing. I mean, it's in rough shape, and it's pretty well. They've got it coned all the way from Penn all the way, I bet, past Bryant. I mean, they're doing serious work up there right now. First question is, these ADA compliant pedestrian ramps, are they doing any bump outs in this area at all, or is it just straight up, you know, repairs to the existing sidewalks?
Yeah, good question. So there is a bit of a trade-off with, given the width, at some points, it is for the most part 36. It wouldn't be possible to do bump outs and a bikeway at the same time. So given that this is on our AAA network, we are implementing a bikeway, and to my knowledge, different staff are leading the ADA implementation portion, but between Brooklyn Center and City of Minneapolis, it was decided to just upgrade the ramps. That's kind of what they had the funding for.
Okay. So to take Phil's point about eliminating parking, yeah, there's substantial no parking up there right now. And what is interesting, if you look at 49th, there's no parking on 49th, and there's no parking on 57th, which are both bikeways. The 57th is the Twin Lakes regional path, and 49th is, I believe, it's an off-street bikeway on that. So it's been narrowed. So I think that you've got kind of this section that really could support, because of the low parking, to really just take that space and use these other two streets as examples of where that has taken place. I'd like to kind of mention that getting over to Lindale, the overpass, it's a great opportunity. As Marty said, nobody understands that path there and people crossing there, and to really look at, as a model, 57th again, where they widened that sidewalk and made it comfortable to get across the street. To do more than what was done on 26th Avenue North, which is basically to add bollards to the thing, and that get ripped apart and beat up and torn apart, and is not in good condition now. So I'm glad that you're going to Lindale, and I'm glad that I hope that something more can be done besides stripe and bollards. And lastly, this is getting to Penn Avenue, and that one block section south on Penn takes you to the Shingle Creek Parkway. And to be able to add signing, or to be able to enhance that knowledge of people that Shingle Creek is down there a block away, would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. They are noted, and I really appreciate that you went out there in the field and looked at the corridor.
Dan, you're muted.
Thank you. And I'll undo my hand here there we go. All right. Do you need anything from us, Esma?
Matthew, is it usually at later on that we ask for something? Can you remind me again?
Yes, I think so. I think 0% probably just you got a lot of good feedback today, but resolution probably at 30, I would imagine.
30, okay.
I would like to, I don't know if you can come back at 15%, but it's, I kind of like to see where you're going and just kind of what's coming together on this. And it's a good project. I mean, this is a lengthy section, and it might be, I'd appreciate you coming back at 15 before we get totally in at 30, where you don't come back to us at all.
Certainly. Thank you. I'll be in touch with Matthew and the rest of the team.
Great.
Thank you everyone for your time.
Thank you, Esma. Alrighty, those are all the projects that we had to go through with, and I think we could have some announcements. We have a bike ride coming up this Thursday. Does anybody here want to talk about that, or does everybody know about the bike ride?
Is it the Juneteenth one?
No, this is a ride to check out some improvements on Hennepin Avenue. They are basically, it's a tactile strip that on Hennepin that they put in as a test, and Bree is leading it, and it's leaving, I believe, at 4 o'clock from the big letters at the, help me with the park there, at across from the on Second.
It's gold medal, right?
Medal, yes, yes. So there's some big letters there on Second, and that's where we'll be meeting at 4 o'clock. A little bit before 4 o'clock, so we can leave at 4. I better have that time right. I think I'm due. Well, I'm sorry, it's leaving at 3 o'clock. It's 3 to 4, and we leave at Gold Medal Park, 2nd Street, and 11th is the intersection. And we'll be leaving at 3:15. So if you get there at 3, and it'll be an hour ride. We're going to go down to Hennepin Avenue, and then going over to the Burger Fountain at Loring, and then back to Gold Medal Park. Well, I'm glad I caught that. All right. Phil, we're going to miss not having you there, and we're going to wish you the best of luck tomorrow. We'll be checking in on you. We'll be fine.
Thank you. I will miss my bike, but I'll be able to walk much better after the surgery. So trading one for the other temporarily.
Phil, is it a hip or a knee?
Oh, it's a hip, so
okay.
Easier. Hard to believe, but
they say.
Such as I've heard from everyone. So. Have a good bike ride.
So I'm not seeing anything coming up on the screen, and if there's nothing else to chat about, we'll, Marty? Oh, Marty put her hand down. So, thank you.
Sorry. I didn't know I was muted. Sorry. Hey, I just wanted to throw out to everybody, if you can, come out of your comfort zone a little bit and go to some of the Juneteenth events. I know they're offering some, there's a slow roll, I think, and there's a couple other things going on. So if you're not doing anything, I believe the website, if you put in Juneteenth Minneapolis, but I just want to give it a shout out. It'd be a good thing to go to.
Marty, do you know if there are any events during the day on Friday? The city gave us the day off in honor of Juneteenth, so it'd be nice to actually do something in honor of Juneteenth.
You know, I honestly don't know, but if you go, just check the website. If you go on the say Juneteenth Minneapolis, something will appear, and it should have information about. I think there's also a Facebook page too that has it. So, but no, I'm sorry, I don't.
No problem. Thanks. just thought I'd check since you brought it up. Thanks for raising that up too.
Well, with that, if we have nothing else to talk about, I think we can say goodbye. Thank you. Thank you.
Have a good
for,
one,
uh,
everybody.
Thank you.